Are back, and actually, I don't know about you guys, but it's kind of feeling like we're really back. Like we're really back. We're back where we were. God knows how long ago, right? I mean, it's kind of hard to. I don't know, man. It's just kind of hard to imagine how long it's been. I'm just gonna put this back in. It's I'm looking at the numbers right now on Twitter. I'm looking at the numbers for even just banal basic tweets. I don't want to say that banal basic tweets. I'm just going to say that a solid tweet and racking up 40 likes in minutes. Okay? I've been deprived of this for a long period of time. You guys just got to understand I've been deprived. I've been deprived of the interaction for a long period of time. We know how the COVID cabals, we know how the interactions were during the election period. And about midway through the election period, we got hit and then got really hit. And it's been basically a stagnant year. I mean, you could kind of argue that a whole year was lost. A whole year was lost in terms of growth because of all that stuff. And now the information's getting out there again. Now we can speak freely. We're going to talk more about the Musk stuff, but I'll wait till we get some more people coming on here. Let's wait till we get 30 this time rather than 20. Let's get the 30 on here. I got the account here. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. We got so much stuff to talk about. Oh, man. Let's go, Elvis. ARVP. Hey, tonight we have to celebrate for one of our topics. Not really a celebration, but it's an ironic celebration. Let's put it that way. We have a Chateau Le Clairier, 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 um, which is a white Bordeaux, half Pinot Gris, Sauvignon Gris, sorry, Sauvignon Gris, half Sauvignon Gris. Not a very common varietal. Usually when you have white Bordeaux's, a white Bordeaux is usually Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon. But this is half Sauvignon Blanc and half Sauvignon Gris. Sauvignon Gris is such a rare varietal that you don't even really hear much talked about it in general. It's actually an excellent wine. I've had a couple of these bottles. We've gone through them. I saved this last one for one of these shows. It's very nice. You can see it right here. It's got the high end French kind of elegance to it, where you get just that little bit of oak integration. It's fantastic. It's really, really fantastic stuff. All right, so let's go into this. We're gonna first, finish the initial topic, which is Elon Musk. All right, look, we gotta talk about this. We gotta talk about this stuff. We gotta talk about the Twitter takeover, just because it's the biggest thing on everyone's mind. And I want to just address a couple of things. So, the usual Donnie Darko account posted about how 44 billion, since Musk said he would take over Twitter in an exchange, it was 44, it was, what was it? 4 years, 4 months, 4 days, and the buyout price was 44 billion. Admittedly, this is obviously too much of a thing to be a coincidence. And just like with Trump, I don't think that there's any doubt that there's esoteric significance to there's any esoteric significance to Musk and Trump. They both have tons of it. The question, of course, is always, does this mean anything beyond Does this mean that they're bad, right? Does it mean that they're bad individuals? Does it mean that because Trump has all this and Elon have all this numerology behind them that they're bad individuals? Look, I said this before. Those of you who have been in COVID cabal for a long, long period of time know that I was back in 2020, pre-election. I think it was summer 2020 when we were talking about him. I was saying, I don't know what to think about Musk. I don't know what to think about Elon. I was looking at him like a figure that you could not peg as good or evil. You know, he has Neuralink. He's a big tech guy. It's not necessarily bad that he's a tech guy, but Neuralink, it was very much like humans and AI, kind of this merger together. And I said all the way back then that Elon was the prime candidate for the second beast of the apocalypse in Revelation, which would be, he's the second beast takes down the first beast, and the second beast takes down the first beast, and the first beast is this evil kind of destructive group that we know as the Cabal, and the second beast is this. They bring out all these marvels and technological feats, and everybody wants to just kind of give themselves over to the second beast. Okay? And I still think that Elon, I said this 2 years ago, okay? 2 years ago I said this, nearly 2 years ago. It would have been probably early summer. Some of you guys will remember that Elon would be the second beast of the apocalypse. Now, here's the thing though. Okay, let's just play with this. He's the second beast of the apocalypse. Yeah, that's why the intelligence agencies let him get Twitter. That's why he's, wants the Twitter data. He's going to train Neuralink. All of that stuff, let's just say it's all true. Let's say those are the reasons why. It's not just that Elon wanted free speech and he's a billionaire and he's a, weird but decent person. That's what he wants. Okay? So what? Who cares? I mean that. Who cares? What are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do in this situation? Like, a lot of people on the right, on the freedom side, are so obsessed with being double-crossed and duped and, frankly, losing. Even there's like a double layer of psychology of losing, because you have the standard right who doesn't fight and loses. And then you have the conspiracy right that even if the right wins, they still find a way to make it come across like a loss. I'm just going to be very blunt about this stuff. If Elon is the second beast of the apocalypse, which is completely possible, it doesn't change a single thing in terms of where we're at right now. Do you want the first beast to win? No. Okay, well, per prophecy, the second beast destroys the first beast. The first beast is a real hellhole. The second beast is a false utopia. So you deal with the second beast as it comes. But you're not going to be able to stop the progression of things. And so the alternative that people have, it's like, well, Elon's just going to sell our data and turn us into slaves. It's like, well, we were already going to be fucking slaves anyway under the first system. So let's deal with that enemy later on. Just in the same way, and I know this is like fake history, but not clean history. Let's put it that way. Not clean history. Just in the same way that the Allies worked with the Soviets against the Nazis. Okay, there is a level of expediency. You fight the enemy that's in front of you, and then you fight the next enemy next. After the Nazis were defeated, the Allies focused on the Soviets. Okay? So it may yet come to be with Twitter and Elon. But I can tell you guys something. I am sick and fucking tired of having a censored algorithm. not just from the fact that it affects my business. It was affecting all of the truth movement. So if you start to get to the point where you believe that when truth is allowed to come out and you still think it's bad, you need to check yourself, because you're probably just demoralized and you're hiding behind some sort of, spiritual facade that, oh, I'm so, aware and awake that I know that it's all a scam. Everything's a scam. These are the same kind of people who someone tries to sell you something because it might actually benefit your life. You assume it's a scam because if someone was going to sell you it, if someone sells anything, it's a scam. You have to watch your psychology on this stuff. I am not looking at Elon Musk as a savior. Elon is not a savior. Okay, he's not a savior. But I'm also not going to take away what has happened, the significance of what has happened in the last 24 hours. It is single-handedly the biggest win we have had maybe since Trump's first election. Now, I'm open to hearing you guys can drop some other wins, but I would actually go so far as to say, in terms of impact, it's probably the first really big win we've had since the initial win. Because I can tell you, like, on a personal level, the engagement's off the charts all of a sudden. And even the week and a half before this announcement, when Elon threatened to buy Twitter, I started to no longer have an algorithmic lock. I pay attention to it because I can see my follower count go up and then drop back down. I can see it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then I could see it stop going down. So they stopped something a week and a half ago or so. And now they've blocked they've gotten rid of the shadow banning, because there's no question engagement's going through the roof all of a sudden. It's a huge bit. It's a huge win. And so, Steve, it's a good question. Why did BlackRock and Vanguard let him buy it? I mean, there's two ways you can look at it. You can look at it from the standpoint of, the first argument would be that Elon executed a perfect hostile takeover of Twitter. The thing is, if BlackRock and Vanguard were to throw their money behind and let, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. If they were to block the buy, if they were willing to do that and throw the money down the drain just to block Elon's purchase, it would have crashed Twitter. People would have soured heavily on it, and it would have had this big reverse effect. And of course, the companies would have lost a lot of money. All shareholders would have lost money. They would have faced a class action lawsuit, and it may have been a difficult front to hold up. Now, you could say in the short term, they would have got the censorship they wanted, better to burn the platform down. But the flip side is also this. Jack, and here's a whole other thing, because remember, there's all the allegations of Jack with pedophilia. Okay, which I don't actually know much about personally. I've heard it. I guess I think that there was the tweet he had about reading the satanic verses and eating that good pizza. I think that's the main tweet that people are referring to. At any rate, as much as people didn't want to admit it, and I saw this actually, I did see it. Jack was a moderating influence on Twitter, and it sounds as if he got forced out when he left the board, or if he didn't get forced out, he felt like he couldn't do anything, and he kind of gave up because he had no way to manage it, basically. At any rate, he Jack was very supportive of Elon. Now, the reason I mention this is because within Twitter itself, there was probably a strong Jack loyalist coalition that supported Elon, which you wouldn't have any of that in Facebook, for instance, because Facebook's all Zuck, Facebook's all completely compromised. But in Twitter, you could say there was a faction war, that you had Capital. This is what Jack claims, right? Capital owned Twitter, was moving in that direction. Now, you don't have to buy all this stuff. I'm not saying that you should take it at face value, but that's an argument about why BlackRock and Vanguard let them buy it. They could have had a really difficult fight with not much of a win ahead. And if you were to, okay, Trump was one thing because he had a loud mouth and he was polarizing. But if you were to do something like block Elon, Elon has kind of broad mainstream support. So in the end, you might end up only, it's kind of like you're faced with a lose-lose situation. So it may have been a cut your losses kind of situation. Elon, lesser of two evils. And actually, B. Scholes, this is a really great point, which is that there's no question that if they didn't let Elon buy Truth Social, if they didn't let Elon buy Twitter, then Truth Social would have really blown up much more. There would have been a lot more focus on Truth Social. Whereas as a result of Elon buying Twitter, Truth Social's kind of, an afterthought at this point. I'm not saying it has no purpose, but it's kind of an afterthought. And Green Mountain Bear, it's a great point. We all got on Truth Social. Most of us got on Truth Social this past week. Now, is that a coincidence? Maybe they were taking their sweet time and they realized what the fuck was going on and they rushed to get people on. I mean, now Trump's going to start tweeting on Truth Social next week. Look, I'll be honest, guys. I'm going to be on Truth Social. I'm going to be posting stuff on Truth Social. The only difference between the content on Truth Social and Twitter is I'll probably be more political on Truth Social than I will be on Twitter. And I'll post my best tweets on Twitter on Truth Social, and I'll be more political on Truth Social. But otherwise, there won't be a massive difference between the two accounts. I'm just telling you guys that I'm not trying to scam you, get on Truth Social, I'm going to post totally new content. I'm not going to cultivate new content for Truth Social, except for the, political thoughts here and there. It'll be the kind of COVID Cabal channel, let's put it that way. It'll be the COVID Cabal channel, to the extent I really go down that rabbit hole off COVID Cabal itself. But here's the reason I mention this stuff. When all this stuff is going on, Trump's finally going to go on Truth Social. It just seems like too much of a coincidence. And I really feel like it's been super bungled. It's been fucked up. The two big tech guys as part of Truth Social, they both left in early April. I'm not giving up on it. A lot of people are claiming it's going to be big for disclosure. It very, very well could be. But I'm also not going to lie. I'm not going to say that Truth Social is the best. It's a weaker version of Twitter in terms of its software, and it took them a long ass time to get people on. I mean, it's kind of unacceptable to take 2 months to have someone get onto a site. 1 month is a long period of time. 2 months is an unacceptable amount of time. But they're doing what they can. I know they don't have the tech support of other tech companies. We'll see what happens, as they say. But let's look at it this way. It's better to have multiple fail-safes. Are we worse off for having Truth Social? We're not. We're in a much better position for having it. And they're very well, once Trump starts to tweet on there, we could start to see a much bigger network effect right now it's kind of hard to trace exactly the epicenter of the network. And one of the things I'm hoping to do actually on True Social is talk about, dating relationship stuff there, because the big issue with these, truther, conservative platforms is that they're just fucking boring. They're boring. They only talk politics. It's not like a regular conversation where people say interesting things. They're in your corner. Maybe there's a lot of politics, but there's also other things. All these conservative platforms, it's like they can only isolate, let's talk about this political thing that we were going to be censored about. They can't create a broader conversation. So I'm going to do what I can to see if these tweets go anywhere. I mean, it's been one day, they haven't, but we'll see what happens. Go through these comments before I move on to the next topic. If you guys have anything else on Elon, drop it now, because I'm going to move on at this point to other stuff. It's good news, guys. It's the best news since Trump won the election in 2016. It's good news. I don't want to hear Elon buying Twitter is bad news. Please explain a direct way why it's bad news. Even if down the line there's a plan in the short term, it's still good news. And the only reason that they would have this, bluff, this manipulation, is because they had to get rid of Plan A because of pressure. So it's a win however you want to look at it. I refuse to be cynical about everything. I think it's an unhealthy way to live. Unhealthy way to live. I don't align with it. It doesn't make any fucking sense to me. My personal perspective on Elon is he's neutrally polarized. I actually align with Magenta quite a bit on this. She says Putin and Elon are two individuals who are neutrally polarized. And, those were things, I didn't use that terminology, but there were things that I said prior that I agreed with. It's like how I felt. Like, well, he's not cabal, but he's on our side. Oh, Elon's not cabal, but he's on our side. And I said that for both of those individuals. So neutrally polarized is a good way to describe it. And apparently, in these end of cycle periods, they move towards the positive, and that makes a lot of sense to me. I respect, with Gab, I respect what Andrew Torba did tremendously. And I don't think it's for naught. I mean, he has a really, really good community there. The people who are on Gab are really, really loyal. And they're definitely way more right-wing than I am. Not a critique of them. In the early days, it was a very racist place. And look, I'm all about jokes. I don't really take that kind of shit seriously. I hate political correctness. I like joking around about things. But I also, I have a off-color humor, so to speak. But I feel people's energy, and I've been around people who are genuinely racist. And when you feel it, the energy is not very good. It's like an actual genuine hate. It's not like we're going to make fun of some different, some differences. We're going to poke fun at each other kind of thing. It's literally like some of these people would joke about harming people of other races because they're like, it's like a kind of subhuman attitude. I don't, when you feel that, it's really so disturbing that it's, even if somebody's like ostensibly on your side, you just don't really want to be around it. It's not like, it's not funny. It's not funny. It's just uncomfortable. And Gab in the early years was like that. Now, I checked it out a little bit more recently. I didn't see it. I think that there's still those people there, but they're maybe a little bit more quiet or subsumed. It's mostly like a prepper, homeschool, religious, conservative circle. I do think it will suffer, but I don't think it'll suffer too much just because there's a serious brand loyalty, Gab is just super niche. And so it's not going to really grow, but it's not going to die because the people, I mean, maybe in the future it'll die, but the people who are on there have established networks like we have on Twitter. Like I want to expand on this True Social theoretically, right? But the reality is that the communities on Twitter, even with the censorship, like you still want to be on Twitter because there's just a broader network and community there. In these conservative platforms, you don't have it. You have like I have to be centered around some politician rather than some, autistic guy who's interesting. A bunch of different. It's much more decentralized than Twitter. It's difficult to have a network that is built too heavily around certain individuals. Now, a certain individual can expand the network, just like Trump did help to bring a lot of people to Twitter, but Twitter already had a broader base. So it was like a new node in a bigger network. To create a community around a single node is very fragile. And that's one of the big issues here. So Gab will be fine. Parler, I think, will die. And I'm being kind of biased here because I think Parler's always was crap and it was a corporate hack scheme. Same thing with Getter. I hate that. I hate all that shit. I mean, Gab at least was like real. Andrew Torba put his blood, sweat, tears into that. Separate servers, whole separate infrastructure. I respect it. It's not the prettiest site, but I respect it. Getter and Parler were just like hack job, like, stupid shit. It just was. I get it in the context of trying to find a place, but nothing. There's no longevity to these spots, none at all. So Elon buying Twitter, big thing. Trump was the only one who could really make something long lasting, simply because of his reputation. So we'll see with True Social if it gets some legs. But I'll say it again, Elon getting Twitter, biggest thing since the 2016 election. It's just absolutely huge. Devastating blow for left. Yeah. All right. Yeah, it's the insurance policy. So let's move on to, since I had the wine here, let's move on to, well, actually, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to move on to the next thing here. We'll go back at the very end to, no, I'm going to contradict myself once more. Let's do domestic to foreign. Okay, so the big thing that's going on right now, the big talk, is about Trump as Speaker of the House and that they're going to impeach Biden. Now, the international stuff that we're going to talk about in a bit is, this is great. So, it's PAGs here. Let's talk about the House going red in November. Trump being seated as Speaker, moves to impeach both Biden and Kamala, successfully forging his path back to overall office prior to 2024. So those of you who will recall that I talked about a path, which is what Wano Savin outlined. I think it's a reasonable argument, by the way, that Republicans win big in the House, but it's more than that. It's like military secures the election. We have military secures the election. And, well, hold on, let me just say this real quick to Jose's question in the comments. All right, and I'll go back to all that stuff just because I'm not going to go back to this afterwards. The second beast is an apocalypse thing from the Revelation. So you basically have first beast is, this super over demonic kind of group. And then the second beast comes in and takes down the first beast. And the second beast is people who are going, which has the Antichrist, right? And the Antichrist in this entire group is basically going to bring about the golden age. But it's a false light kind of thing. It takes you away from God. It subsumes you. that sounds like something that Elon Musk would be a part of if it exists, right? I've already told you guys I'm skeptical about Revelation. I don't think Revelation is a higher consciousness book in the Bible. I don't think it comes from the astral. I don't think it comes from God. That's my perspective. I know it's heretical to a lot of people. But it doesn't mean that I dismiss the arguments around it. Okay? So that's the first beast, second beast stuff. I also don't like that story for the major reason that it's extremely depressing, because it basically means that if you believe in God, your purpose is just to be oppressed and to deal with hell all the time until you get taken away. I think I don't like the energy that gives off. That sounds to me, the energy feels very anti-God. Like, it's one thing to have to deal with the tribulation. It's another thing to be like, oh yeah, you're never going to make it. Like, everything is just going to get worse and worse and worse, and it's always going to get bad. And then the very last second, you and only you, because you just dealt with crap all the time, or you're going to get saved. I just don't like that kind of shit. It doesn't really resonate with me. But if Elon's saying, hey, the golden age is you plugging into the matrix, well, I'm not going to buy into that. So maybe I will end up being one of those individuals who ends up outside the system. But I'm going to take it as it comes. Okay, so back to what we were saying. Trump in the midterms. So Wano Savin's big argument with all this stuff was that Trump would, how do I put this? That there was going to be an intervention. The midterm elections would be secured, and then Trump would be reinstated. So the new Congress would come in, and that Congress, as their first act, remember, Congress comes in early January, like January 7th or 9th, and they would, since Congress certified Biden as president, that Congress would then say, yeah, the election was stolen, and now Trump's going to be president. And Trump would become president literally, late January. Excuse me. Had some really bad allergies this weekend. Trump would become president late January. He'd be able to serve out officially the last 2 years. And then he could run again, which would allow him a full 10 years in office. And I think it's a reasonable idea. And last time we talked here, one of the things that we talked about was that Trump and all this stuff, that if there was going to be action from the military, it would have to happen before the midterm elections. And I think we all agreed, like, if it doesn't happen before the midterm elections, it's not going to happen. And I hate to backtrack at all, because I actually think that this whole thing is, how do I put it? If this doesn't happen, things are going to get bad. I agree with that. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. The more I've thought about it, the more I've come to the feeling that it's entirely possible that they steal the midterm elections. And there is no savior to block the midterm elections from being stolen. And there's a couple of reasons for this, and I'm just going to lay them out here for you guys. The first is that while I do feel almost certain that the economic collapse happens prior to the midterm elections, probably it's going to happen in stages, of course. May, whatever, but acutely by end of summer into the fall. And a lot of that has to do with energy, of course, because as you get into the fall, energy becomes more important for heating, especially in Europe. But the bigger reasons for it are that I wonder, are people going to really understand the significance of the 2020 election? Trump keeps saying you can't get to 2024 or even 2022 without fixing 2020. And people just don't believe it, right? There's a huge swath of the population, and you have to, okay, this is important. I know people who never would ever vote for Biden. They're against all of that. They hate all that shit. They voted for Trump, even if they didn't love Trump, but they voted for Trump. And these are mostly, of course, older people. But they do not for a second believe that, well, I don't want to say not for a second. They're in denial. But they don't want to believe. They're kind of in this dissonance where they'll say, well, yeah, 2020 was stolen, but it won't affect the next election. It's kind of like, they're kind of in this like place, like, yeah, they stole 2020, but they won't steal the next one, right? It's like, we can tell them that they stole every election for the last 20 years, and they're not going to like that, obviously, right? So, will people get galvanized, unless it's stolen again, even more flagrantly? I've heard some people say that there's not even going to be a midterm election, that they're going to find some way to shut down, they'll do this. I don't know what's going to actually happen with it. I'm just telling you guys, it would not shock me at all if they very overtly steal the midterms, because let's be honest, they pretty overtly stole the 2020 election. So they steal the midterms fairly overtly as well. What happens next? What happens next with it, right? I think that's when you start to see civil breakdown. And you combine that with the economic collapse, issues with war, the jab maybe as well. And so you have a situation where come the following spring, there is not really a clear government in the United States. And you could then see in the spring, like late March 2023, you could then see the action be taken, right? Because at that point, there's going to actually be a revolution from the people. So that at that point, it's not a matter of preempting the revolution that's ready. It's a matter of emerging to guide it, so to speak, in a healthy way. Well, it's Pags. I agree with you from the standpoint, he's saying there's no clear government in the United States as we sit here tonight. I agree with you. Everybody understands that there is not a clear level of authority that existed in the past. But from the normie standpoint, they're not quite there yet. And I'm just making this point that I could see it happening until March. And by the way, guys, if you want to throw the esoteric in here, from the asteroid perspective, Pluto enters Aquarius in March 2023. So remember, March 2020, I was thinking it was going to happen around Easter then. Well, maybe it's going to happen around Easter 2023. Now, the other possibility is that we do see action happen prior to the midterms, and then we go through a 6-month period of chaos where there's not a clear government in the United States because there's arrest and there's military action, and there's no president, and that doesn't actually get cleared up until spring 2023. That's another possibility. I don't know. I'm just telling you that I can see this stuff occur in both directions. And maybe the reality is that how fast it occurs depends on the movement of the population towards the truth. I won't go much more into it, but for reasons many of you guys may be able to discern, the risks for me go much higher as it goes on. So, I'd be very happy, obviously, to have it be dealt with earlier, but we deal with it as we have to deal with it. I don't believe on a realistic perspective the system's done in the fall. I think that there's so many cracks that it's flooding in as we get through the second half of this year, but let's be honest, this system isn't totally done even until 2024, maybe beyond. There's a lot. We've had decades of stuff built up here, and there's going to be a lot of breakdown. And I think as we get more mature, we start to understand that this stuff is not an immediate process. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's not, secret trials, patriots in control kind of stuff. It's that they may be in control in the sense that they control the board, that they will win the game, but how many moves until the game's over? Which is a good way for us to transition. I hope you guys are still strapped in because we got a lot more to talk about here. I realized I didn't finish this. The impeachment of Biden, Trump as Speaker of the House. I'm frankly not inclined to. I think it's a good, 3D strategy. Let's put that in. 3D strategy to make Trump Speaker of the House. It's not going to happen though. Like people have to get the fuck out of their asses with this stuff. I don't mean this in the wrong way. I think it's a good strategy. I think it's smart that people are pursuing it, but pursue it while also understanding that the system is going to collapse. It's hard for me to, whenever I hear someone talk about how they look from a long-term perspective about elections and about the current Congress and thinking of the two things, we're going to fix this country and they're going to maintain the current kind of Congress and everything's going to collapse. It's going to completely collapse. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen in 2022, maybe not even 2024, but by the end of the decade, I mean, does anybody really think that anyone's going to care about people making political statements, that any of the people in Congress today who are like, let me follow what the media tells me to say, these people are going to retire at best. Yeah, well, Willie, this is a common thought about DeSantis versus Trump. In many ways, it's Trump versus is there going to be an election? It's exactly what you say. Do we know that there's even going to be a fucking election? These systems are collapsing rapidly. They're collapsing rapidly. And you just don't know how to protect yourself from it. My advice to all of you guys is to get out of the way. I did not get out of the way. Okay? And I'm not being dour about this stuff. Okay, I accept my karma, and frankly, I actually understand my mission, and that gives me a lot of clarity of thought. But unless you have some similar level of internal conviction or understanding, you want to just get out of the way of this stuff, because it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. The whole thing like Trump's going to become speaker. Look, Trump could easily become Speaker of the House. That's not controversial. The numbers they're talking about are stupid too. Like, oh my God, Republicans are going to gain like 30 seats in the House. Like, okay, until the Republicans are going to gain 200, 150, 200 seats in the House, don't even fucking talk to me about this stuff. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. Oh, Republicans are going to have a big win, which means absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Republicans wouldn't do shit anyway. 100%. 100%. And, okay, Democrats impeached Trump twice, and they actually didn't impeach him. They indicted him twice for impeachment, and he wasn't removed. So what will happen? Well, Trump becomes Speaker of the House, and then they're going to they're going to impeach Biden, and then Trump will become president. Well, okay, excuse me, but again, you have to remove him, and you have to have 2/3 in the Senate to remove a president. It's a majority to indict in the House, and it's 2/3 in the Senate to convict. Do we have 2/3 in the Senate? No. It's just politicking. Like, yeah, let's get Trump as Speaker of the House, and then we can all, it can be Trump versus Biden. Trump's, more powerful as Speaker than, but nothing gets done. I'm tired of this shit. We're all tired of this shit. Honestly, if that's what Trump does, I'm going to lose support for him, because it's just like loudmouth bullshit. I'll actually start to believe that Trump is just a scammer, if that's the case. Because, I mean, not like in the hardcore sense, like I still appreciate him and everything. But if Trump's plan is to like come back as Speaker, I think it's good like trolling right now. Don't get me wrong. I don't care that the story's being seeded because of how it maybe affects people's thinking. But that's not how we win this. It's not how we win this. You can't win a captured operation from this manner. Oh my God, Republicans are going to win, 30 more seats in the House. Like, big win. It's just this stuff. Aren't we tired of this bullshit? Just such fucking bullshit. So sick of hearing it. All right. So let's talk about the big macro stuff, because this is what really matters. Speaking of elections, okay, we have the French election. Now, there's a lot going around about this French election being stolen. And was the French election stolen? It's possible it was stolen. I'm not going to say it was stolen. I'm going to say it's possible it was stolen. I saw those election night graphs. I also get the fact that they made a big point of saying how it wasn't an electronic election, and yet they won by paper. And I also saw videos of people showing corrupted ballots for Le Pen, who was, of course, the nationalist candidate. All that being said, while I am not at all saying that the election in France was not stolen, because I could totally buy it, I think that, at the end of the day, Le Pen was a very weak candidate. And she does not really have a lot of fight in her. I mean, for Christ's sake, her own niece didn't vote for her in the primary. She voted for Zemmour, who I think in the general would have been a better candidate. Zemmour might have been able to pull it off, because I don't know that if you know anything about French politics, basically the point is that France is divided into three-thirds. And of the three-thirds, actually, the right is the largest. So you have about 40% are in the right bloc, which would be Le Pen and Zemmour. Zemmour, who is a former journalist, who very eloquent. I listened to some of his speeches. I think he was very, very well spoken. And you have in the Le Pen family, it started with her father, who was very anti-Semitic, and then Marine Le Pen, who is not much of a personality and, frankly, I think a liability in many ways. And then you had her niece, Marianne Maréchal Le Pen, who is, I think, in many ways a much more better reflection of conservative France, because she's a very pretty woman in her 30s who has many children, very classic French Catholic kind of family. But she didn't get, as a result, super, super involved. I think she became like, in parliament, but didn't push it further. But the point is that she endorsed Zemmour versus Le Pen, Marine Le Pen, her aunt. So you had, in the first round, you had Mélenchon, who is a socialist. He got about a third of the vote, 30%. Then you had Macron and the collective centrist parties, which were about at 30% as well. And then you had Le Pen and Zemmour, who combined are about 40%. So the right had more votes, but in the general, it seems like the left, even though the left and the right in France have about the same politics, except for immigration, on literally every other issue. When it comes to economic politics, when it comes to foreign policy, with NATO and Russia, the left and the right it's basically like Bernie and Trump in many ways. The only issue is immigration between the two of them, and of course the labeling of Le Pen being part of the right. Anyway, allegedly in the main election, most of Mélenchon's voters did not vote for Le Pen. They voted for Macron, and Macron won the election. But here's the thing I want to talk about with France. Whether or not it was stolen, I suspect, of course, that there was foul play. It would not shock me in the slightest to find out that the election was stolen. But the reality is that it doesn't really matter. France has become a failed state in many ways. It's a super divided country. It's packed full of immigrants and not very assimilated. But even more than that, it's just it's kind of the center force, especially with Macron, of the European Union project. And there's been a lot of riots since the end of the election. There were a lot of riots last summer of the Gilets jaunes, right, the yellow vests. Because remember, of course, as you might expect, most of the nationalist right are working class Frenchmen. So they would wear yellow vests to do things, kind of like the truckers in Canada. What we're looking at with all of this, and this is what I want to really talk about, is that I'm going to throw this out there, because the French elections are 5-year terms. Okay? It's a 5-year term if you're the president of France. So right now, Macron is going to be there till 2027. And I'm going to put out a statement that I don't think he's going to be there till 2027. I expect France to undergo a revolution within the next, I will say the next 2 years, to be generous to myself. But I actually think it's going to happen within the next year. But 1 to 2 years is when I expect it to occur. The country, of course, has a history of revolution, but you also have a very interesting military faction in France, which has not been quiet about its displeasure. I don't know if you guys recall, a year ago, you had 300 retired admirals and generals in France who made a statement to the government, to Macron, saying that they did not like what he was doing. Now, oh, well, they were retired. Well, who do you fucking think told them to write the letter? Their buddies who are in active military, because you can't, in active military, write a letter or you'd be committing treason. But once you've retired, you're a public citizen. So they're writing these letters on the behalf of their colleagues within the military. And you can get into the conspiracies about the 3 to 5 families that run France and about their disposition. You know, what's his face? Michael St. Clair was using his pendulum, and the pendulum said that Marine Le Pen would win the election. But once again, that Macron would be seated. And he suspected Macron would be seated. The question here is just basically not about, it's about where the sentiment in the country is. Was it stolen? Was it not? But the thing is, even if it wasn't stolen, there's no support for the center. In the center, right? It's not even the center. It's the globalist. There's no support for the globalist in France. There's none. I mean, it's maybe like it's at best the same size as 1/3 of the public. But it's arguably a little bit smaller, and it's shrinking. It's more from the older class. The youth tends to split much more between right and left. So you have this situation where nobody likes Macron, yet he wins the election because the right and the left are divided. And so what happens, especially because Macron wants to integrate the European Union much more. And so now we have to branch out into broader EU politics. And I'm going to check in with the group here. I see the numbers are still really good, but we still have a lot more to tackle. Are you guys okay? Are you guys okay with me going? Should we stop? Should we keep going? Just want to make sure I'm pacing you guys. Should we keep going? All right, tapped in. So, with the EU, what was the big term for the EU? Okay, term is not the right word. What was the way they would describe what's the purpose of the EU? Keep the Russians out, the Germans down, and the Americans in, right? And so, what do we look at right now with the EU? Well, we're looking at that pretty much exactly. Or sorry, that was NATO. Excuse me, that was NATO. But NATO and the EU are super integrated at this point. And honestly, if you want to look at the slight difference between the EU has always been a Franco-German compromise. Okay? Franco-German compromise with the aim of the French would have, of course, the military and political dominance, and the Germans would have the economic dominance. So it was a way of the French using the Germans' economy to create a bigger state than they were capable of, and the Germans using the French political cachet to create a bigger state than they were allowed. Because, of course, Germany can't get too big, because we all know what happens when Germany gets too big. So, if you were to assess what's going on with this war in Ukraine, and the stuff with Russia, well, what's actually happening? What you're seeing is the complete destruction of German industry. Now, you have Scholz in Germany, who's a total fucking retard, stupid as they come. Really, literally, as stupid as they fucking come. It hardly gets stupider than German politicians. And let's be honest here, not just the big politicians, the regular German politicians. I don't understand why the Germans are so provincial and so unable to understand duplicity after all these years. You know, there are really good, trusting people at the end of the day. Like the Germans are the very high trust society, and they just still haven't gotten it. This whole stuff is designed to destroy Germany. What's going on with Russia? Because they're going to lose access to Russian gas, and German economy, German industry will cease to exist after that occurs. Now, the relevance of this in terms of Trudeau, not Trudeau, I just saw Trudeau in the comments. Trudeau is stupid, but Trudeau's actually, he's not supposed to be smart. He just do what he's told, right? Macron, his goal has always been to make France the center of the European Union. But how do you make France the center of the European Union? You have to take down Germany. And so you see how these individuals, they can't execute a broad strategy or alliance because it always depends on one of them taking down the other. That's why they're such fucking retards. That's why they're so stupid, because they're so corrupt, they're so messed up that they are not able. Macron will accelerate this war. He will accelerate this war with Russia. There's absolutely no question about it. He's going to do it. And he will take down Germany in the process. You are completely right, Lifted 88. Macron is just following World Economic Forum orders. And we actually know as a fact Macron's beneficiaries are directly the Rothschilds, right? The top of the 13 bloodline families. Macron is completely owned. You know, he's got his mommy girlfriend, right? Mommy girlfriend. You know, he's got this like 40, 50-year-old woman. I mean, let's be honest here. We know Macron's gay. We know he's gay. We know he's gay like Trudeau. We know it's all a front. All this stuff is bullshit. It doesn't matter. But the point here is that Macron wins in France. He barely even holds control of France. And then he's going to accelerate. He's going to try to move towards being basically in control of the European Union. And he has the support of that with Christine Lagarde. And what we're going to see basically is this rush for France to centralize as it's collapsing, and then to move France into the EU to centralize as the EU is fragmenting. So you see this, right? These individuals who want this new world order, this global apparatus, what is happening is that they're rushing towards centralization, but as they push towards it, all the legs of it collapse under them. Doesn't get them there, right? So I expect that France is going to fall into revolution within the next year or two. I don't know if it's going to be a military coup-backed one, but I would not be surprised if what we see happen in the United States mirrors what happens in France. That's what I would not be surprised about it. I think France will be rougher than the United States, but that's what I think. I have another topic, but I'm going to go downstairs for a moment, and I want you guys to drop some comments in the meantime while I go downstairs. I'm going to go outside, actually. Kind of want to get a little bit of fresh air. Maybe I'll let up a pipe. We got three more big topics. So don't worry about me shutting it down. But if you guys are good, just start dropping some comments, all right? Drop those comments. Drop the comments. Drop them, drop them, drop them. Drop them like they're hot. Did get a little chilly out. It's raining a bit, but it's nice. This is the best time to be out. You know, back in the day, I would show you guys a lot more outside shots starting in late March. I haven't done as much of it. It's just easier to deal with the temperature and whatnot. Keep dropping the comments. Yeah, I'm going to talk about Canada. Keep going, keep going. I am indeed listening. Keep going, keep going. Any other questions? We're going to be out in a moment. Any last questions? Or what? Where are we at with this? Well, I wouldn't trust him either. But I'm gonna go into this. Just a few more secs when we'll be there. Just setting us up for victory. Like the it's a bit like the old times, right? You guys want me to set a light? see here. Let's see how it plays out. All right. Oh, we got the CERN questions here too. All right, give me 1 second. I feel like I just gotta light this pipe for a moment. Haven't lit the pipe for maybe about a year. We got some fun stuff coming. No question. I'm gonna answer all the questions. And I also got some funny stuff of my own here to bring up. Oh, just some tobacco. And by the way, guys, I'm gonna put this out to my email list. So if you guys are on my email list, let me know for sure and join it. But just want you guys to know that I'm gonna be speaking at the 21 convention in the fall, in October. And I'll give the details on the list, but you should really come to it. It's going to be, it's not just going to be about dating relationship stuff. There's going to be other topics discussed on this one. I can tell you that. So just given the nature of things, I'm not sticking so exclusively to that kind of stuff this time around. So yeah, any last questions, please? Because I'm gonna do two things. First off, I'm gonna show you guys the drink about to make for part 2 of this, which is a limoncello spritzer. So we have Villa Massima, which is a nice limoncello. And then you just use any kind of basic spritzer. I'm using a Sekt here from Germany, which I think is crap. I hate Sekt. I think Sekt tastes like crap. Schloss Bierbach, I think it tastes like crap. My dad and I get into fights about this. I think it's dog shit. But it's good for mixing. It's bubbly. And so you have a limoncello spritzer, just like that. Keep going, I'm almost done. I'm going to show you guys real quick, though, if you can see it. Maybe vaguely down here. Building a vegetable garden. A big old vegetable garden in this lot because you guys know how the shortages and everything like that are going to be. So how could you not? What else we got here? What else we got? And yeah, I'm taking a piss. In case you guys were wondering, I'm taking a piss. I'm not going to show off the show to take a piss. I'm just going to do it. And we're going to have a drink. And we're going to have a smoke. And we're going to finish the conversation. Because you guys are family at this point. If you can't do this around family, who can you do it around? All right. Give me 1 second. Let me just get this smoke up and I'll answer these questions, all right? All right, amped up. I have to relight that. It's the way it is. All right, let me check these questions first, then we'll get the second part of this. So, all right. Gotta talk about China. Well, I'm gonna save China for the. Well, okay. Let's see here. So, China, I don't have clear answers on. We know where China's gonna lead. Okay, let's just follow the bigger picture stuff here. So I guess this leads into the big war concept that we want to talk about, which is that this war is going to escalate. I've been saying this for a while, and it's not because Russia wants the war to escalate, but once you understand the people you're dealing with, you understand that it is going to escalate. You understand that they can't do anything but escalate the war. So, you guys know that go all the way back to early mid-March. And we were talking about, on COVID Cabal, we were talking about how Russia was resolutely winning the war and how the units in the Donbass were pinned down and how it was going to be a disaster for Ukraine. Now, we know, of course, now that there were, Russia pulled out of the north and the northeast. And if you listen to Scott Ritter, these were feints in that they were designed to lock down Russian troops. If you listen to other people, they were aspects of Plan A, where Russia thought that they could move in faster and take down the Ukrainians would have surrendered faster. I don't actually think that these two ideas are mutually exclusive. It's quite reasonable and logical to think that Russia would have planned to have assaults fulfill objectives in both phase, Plan A and Plan B. That, well, if Plan A is correct and they dissolve quickly, we want to have these units here. And if Plan B's what's actually going to happen, then there's also benefits from having troops here. What you want to avoid in planning is having units positioned in locations that only make your situation difficult down the line, that don't have any benefit whatsoever, that only have costs. So we can safely say that whether Russia really believed that Plan A was going to be a real thing, which was that Ukraine's military would effectively dissolve and the government would surrender, or whether you believe in Plan B, which would be much more inclined to think that it was all a feint to tie down Ukrainian troops, or you could just believe that they were stupid and they fucked up across the board. You can believe that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Russia has 1/3 of the troops deployed as Ukraine in the entire war, and right now, all the troops that were moved away from the north have been redeployed to the south, and the Ukrainian army is being decimated right now in the Donbass. It's being decimated. It's a terrible thing, if we're being honest here. It's a terrible thing to see happen. War is hell. I see these videos of Ukrainians getting fucked up, and I don't like it, actually. I unsubscribe from the channels. It's just kind of disgusting to watch after a certain point. It's most of these people who are being thrown into the meat grinder are conscripts. You know what I mean? They're conscripts. They're people who Ukraine drew out of their population as the war began, and have been throwing them in with 1 to 2 weeks of training to get ground up in artillery. The Russians are not wasting their own manpower at this point. They lost soldiers in the first phase. Again, whether you want to believe that's part of phase, Plan A or Plan B kind of dynamic, they certainly lost people. They certainly made tactical mistakes. They lost troops. They lost a couple thousand soldiers. They're not trying to lose soldiers now. So in Azovstal and Mariupol, they're not going to raid the steel factory. They're going to let the individuals in there surrender or die, because eventually they run out of water, they run out of food. There's no reason to send Russian soldiers into there and to suffer, right? And the similar thing applies in this cauldron that's being created in the Donbass. There's no reason for Russians to advance too quickly. They're being shelled heavily and broken down, and eventually you will see armored columns from the northeast, Kharkov on the northeast, and from Melitopol north. We're much further north than Melitopol, but I'm just giving the biggest city in that region. They will flank it from the back and create a proper cauldron when the time's right, probably within the next 1 to 2 weeks. But here's the big thing that's important to note about this entire thing. The most relevant thing is that now that this is happening, well, all of a sudden, the international media is starting to talk about the war in Ukraine, in the Donbass, right? They're no longer just talking about the heroic stance in Kiev. They're starting to acknowledge, wait, the Ukrainian military is dying in the Donbass, okay? Now, obviously, this has got some significance. And I am going to go into this, but I want to check through the comments real quick, because I have a habit in the past shows of going on my monologues and ignoring the comments. So let me just take a little pause here for a second, because I'm going to talk about what I think is coming next in the war in a moment. This is a good place to pause, because this is where we have been at with the Russians about to take the whole thing in the southeast. So let's see here. Lifted 88. France will usually be rougher. They are born in this and it runs in their blood. I completely agree. I do think that France has an inclination to get bloodier. I agree with that. I don't see a scenario where the nationalists don't win in France, because the nationalists are larger and they're more aggressive and they have more at stake and they have more in the military on their side. That's my impression. I'm not an expert on this, but that's my impression from what I've seen. Let me see something here for a second. Okay. Currently in Canada, the energy is quite static. Conservative Party frontrunner Pierre Poilievre is the populist candidate, but there's some rumors of his own World Economic Forum allegations. My inclination is to believe that Poilievre is World Economic Forum. However, I won't claim that I know enough about the scenario to really lean into that too heavily. I think Canada is just simply a completely captured operation. And if you're in Canada, your big objective should be to focus locally, focus on creating some sort of local, provincial support for yourself, like is happening in Alberta and Saskatchewan, because that's going to be the most protective thing that you can possibly do. Other than that, you're kind of fucked, to be honest. I don't see resolution coming until the United States fixes itself. If the United States can't fix itself, then Canada's fucked. There's just not enough of you guys. I'm not saying that to be demoralizing, because we have a similar problem in the States where you got to have enough people there. It's just that, you look at what the truckers did. The truckers made a big impact in Canada and globally, but it was a very Pyrrhic victory. The truckers themselves suffered extremely heavily, and even though they achieved their aims, they were effectively abandoned by the broader Canadian public. And a lot of the individuals got cracked down on hard, in many ways, I think, harder than what happened at January 6th. Just say that. When is ET disclosure coming? Well, it's coming when they run out of cards to play. And so some people claim it's going to happen at the end of the summer. I don't know. But they're going to do the Project Blue Beam kind of thing at that point. So, interesting thing with Canada 2022, 2023. I've been on the record about my perspective with Canada and what I think about it. I actually believe that Canada and the United States are going to become one by the time this whole thing is over. Because once the truth of the whole administration of Canada and the United States comes out, then Canadians are going to realize that they've never been free people and that the group that's owned them has always been against the United States and against people in general. And I just think it's going to be a natural. I think the U.S. and Canada are going to be so linked up in their own revolution that it'll eventually start to merge together. Now, that said, I expect, let me just say, I wouldn't be surprised if this next winter that there's some cross-border migration from Canada to the U.S. because of, if we go to that example I gave that it takes until spring 2023 in the States until things flip, then we have a really dark winter, and it's going to be especially dark in Canada. Because if you have shortages and you're in a cold location, it's particularly bad. So I see that kind of stuff happening. Let me go down this list before I keep going. You think trial by combat should be in a healthy society? I'm actually not. I'm not in favor of it, but I'm not against it. I think that the issue. It's actually a really good question. I think it's actually worthy of a conversation. Let me throw this out there real quick. This is total digression for a lot of you guys, but I think it's worth talking about. The reason that they got rid of dueling, or at least a major reason, was that there were certain individuals who were sociopathic with it. So, for instance, if you were somebody who spent your entire life focused on guns, and you love guns, and you just love to shoot guns, and so then you decide to pick fights with people, and you know how to shoot guns much better than them, so you keep killing people, right? And there were people like this. There were people like this who were like in the early 1800s and prior, but it became a real social problem in the early 1800s, where you had individuals who were hotheads and violent, and they would use honor to force good people to get in the duels and who would get killed over and over and over again. And that's an abuse of a system as well. So you can say like, well, the legal system has become, covered by pussies and stuff like that, where you have beta guys who hide behind legalese, and there's truth to this. But the trial by combat kind of situation also, you have to deal, when you're dealing with trial by combat, you're dealing with a society based on honor. And at a certain point, there were a lot of individuals who liked violence, who were honorable, who were using it for dishonorable means. So, for whatever that's worth. All right, moving on. if we use the 3 Lotra movies, the timeline, where do you think we are right now? Well, I would maybe say Helm's Deep, Battle of Helm's Deep. Elon being the charge on the hill. I don't actually think that's a perfect example, but that's something right there. Yeah, we'll see about CERN. We'll see about CERN. What the fuck CERN's going on here? All right, but let me talk about this war stuff. I'm gonna keep going through this other things here. You see all these, because I got 2 big topics to talk about here, and one of them is the meat plant stuff going on here. You see all these earthquakes with 10-kilometer depths in Russia, Mongolia, northern China. Well, we know that they're using earthquakes as weapons. I mean, we know that at this point. If you don't know that they're using earthquakes as weapon technology, then you're not paying attention to technology. It's bad. It's rough. It's bad. But let's keep going with this stuff here. I'm going to get to the meat plants. Well, look, when it comes to Canada and Poilievre, I'm not going to claim that I know enough about him to give you advice on voting. I know that on a spiritual level that there's this, like, giving consent thing. And I think it's valid. I'm not going to dismiss it. But I also want to just say that you have to... I don't think you have to, but even if you're dealing with controlled opposition, dealing with controlled opposition is better than dealing with non-controlled opposition, right? I mean, Poilievre, like, the issue that people have when it comes to voting for, the controlled right candidates is that they actually believe that these individuals, they look at them as like, this guy that I elected him, he's going to be a savior. No, just invite the person who is the controlled party who will slow things down. Let me give you an example. There are certain individuals who have told me that I made a mistake in, it's like, well, you voted for Obama twice. It's like, yeah, I voted for Obama twice. And actually, the first time I voted for Obama enthusiastically. I was at Obama's inauguration at 5 a.m. in the morning. So anybody who wants to tell me I'm some right-wing radical has to explain why I would volunteer for Barack Obama in the primaries in 2007 or 2008 and show up for the inauguration that morning, right? In 2008. I think actually the inauguration was 2009. So, yeah, I was in New Hampshire primary 2008 and in DC, freezing fucking cold inauguration 2009. Why would I be there? Well, I was there because as far as I was concerned, and I had nowhere near the awareness I have right now, right? But as far as I was concerned, why would I support John McCain, who was promising more of the Bush wars, versus Obama? Now, people were like, well, Obama was bad. He was part of them. Yeah, he was part of them. But Obama was their controlled opposition. People were tired of Bush and the wars. Well, you have a caricatured war candidate, McCain, against Obama. who's promising something different. So what are you supposed to fucking do? I mean, I guess you could opt out. Fair enough, but I mean, look, at the end of the day, the controlled opposition candidate is always the better candidate. Not because I don't blame people who don't want to vote for that individual. I'm just making the point that the controlled opposition candidate is their version of like tic-tacking this way and this way, right? So if you say, well, I'm not going to vote for the guy who's going to go here because once I vote for that guy, they're just going to go here. It's like, okay, well, if you don't vote for that guy, they're just going to go here now. And they're going to be all the way over there when they could have been here. Now, I get the arguments. I don't really care. You can do what you want to do. I'm just saying that don't stress so much about, vote in the primaries. Do what you can to get the right candidate. If you're really between two complete evils, then don't vote. If you don't know, always vote for the individual you don't know, but don't give them power. Don't give them power in the sense of like, oh, since I voted for you, I believe everything you're going to say. No, like hold their feet to the fire, scare them. Politicians are cowards. Most politicians are total cowards. Hold their feet to the fire. Poliver, who knows if he's World Economic Forum or not? Well, you know what? Maybe he was. Maybe he isn't now. If you think for a second that everybody who joined Klaus Schwab's little club is going to stick there, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to bail as they see this ship sink. And anybody who for a second thinks World Economic Forum is doing well is fucking delusional. So, let's see here. How do I think their military is performing? I think it's performing pretty well. As I said, I think that they had some tactical issues in the beginning because they rushed forward rapidly. You can debate whether or not that was deliberate. All in all, Russia's military is performing extremely well. And I'm going to make another comment here about Russia's military because I think it's important. Because I think that people seem to think that, I still hear this stuff on Twitter. Like, well, Russia's doing well against Ukraine because they're so much bigger than Ukraine, but they're not going to do well against the, NATO. All right? I'm going to talk to you about that in a second. Fuck me. What the fuck? So, here's the thing about Russia's military with NATO. First off, there really isn't much of a NATO military in Europe. So, the United States has a couple of light infantry divisions, which is not remotely able to deal with any armored corps like the 1st Guards, which is the Russia Premier Armored Division, which, by the way, that division goes back to the storming of Berlin. So that's one of the most prestigious divisions in Russia's military. So that's relevant because if you're dealing with morale, this is a group that is loath to lose, so to speak, right? So you have Russia. You have Russia on the ground is far more equipped for battle than NATO. Also, it's important to understand the United States right now, the United States lost in August $84 billion in military equipment, which we're like, oh, well, U.S., we shrugged it off. But eventually, the numbers start to catch up with you. $84 billion, I mean, we gave Afghanistan a bigger helicopter force in the United Kingdom when we left those units there. And now since Ukraine, we've given 1/3 of our entire anti-tank arsenal to Ukraine. And this continues, right? Now, you guys who are on the COVID Cabal are not remotely surprised about any of this stuff because none of you guys could probably give a, you understand that the intent of all this stuff is to destroy the United States and everything around it. Nevertheless, I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that the West is basically, it started off as, let's give Ukraine all of our old shit, and it gets destroyed. But now Ukraine's wanting more and more and more. Okay, Ukraine's wanting more and more and more. Well, here's the thing. Ukraine wants more and more and more, but we don't have it. We don't have it to send over, but we keep escalating more and more and more. We send military equipment across the border, it gets blown up. How much longer can it go on? I mean, the military-industrial complex makes a lot of money, but it takes time for munitions to be built. Now, Russia, on the other hand, has a military that's equipped to fight a long war, and its units are much more equipped to fight the kind of warfare that will be fought in a continental warfare in Europe. Okay, let's take it a step further. If there were to be a battle between U.S. and Russia on kinetic weaponry only, NATO has no hypersonic missiles. Hypersonic missiles are missiles that are, let's just say, for parlance, super fast, right? And there's no way to block them. The Russians have a CABAL missile. It can be equipped nuclearly. They just launched a test of a nuclear missile that can go around the South Pole. It takes minutes to go around the South Pole to hit the southern United States. It goes low altitude. It has no response to this. There's no way the U.S. can respond to this nuclear attack. It's not a ballistic missile. Ballistic missiles go in the atmosphere. All of U.S.'s air defense systems are based on ballistic missiles. There are no missiles, defense systems in the United States that can deal with missiles that are not hypersonic and are coming from the south of the United States, okay? The two things together, this is really important to understand. I'm really sick and fucking tired of dumb fucking people talking about how, well, NATO's so big, NATO can't do fucking anything. NATO can't do a single fucking thing. They can't do a single fucking thing against Russia. They can't do a single fucking thing against Russia. Does anybody understand that? They cannot do a single fucking thing. It's not going to happen. It will not happen. Because if we were to get into combat, we would have a handful of light infantry divisions in Europe and minimal stockpiles of air weaponry. We could not resupply it quickly. By the time that we could bring over units that could actually defend, we have no armored divisions in Europe. And I'm not even talking about training. None of the U.S. soldiers have any training in armored warfare, continental armored warfare, which the Russians have. So they have no training in the warfare. They have no equipment in that warfare. We'd have light armored divisions against Russian armored divisions, and you'd have Russian missile superiority, maybe air superiority. But the thing is, even if you could argue that NATO planes are better than Russian planes, well, from what I understand, and I'm just saying from what I understand, Russian planes are better at air-to-air superiority. NATO planes F-35 are more advanced with precision bombing, let's just say it's a wash. It doesn't really matter because NATO can't redeploy more planes. They don't have ammunition to even support sorties after a few days because the supplies aren't there. And if NATO were to really escalate it and mobilize soldiers to send across the Atlantic to actually deal with Russia, by the time that NATO could do that, Russia would have themselves mobilized twice the number of units and already redeployed them into Europe because they don't have to ship them across seas. And to a certain extent, maybe they'd be lesser quality, but maybe not. The point is also, though, is there any domestic support for such a war in the United States? There isn't. I mean, the second you get to a hot war with Russia, and it's like, all right, Americans, you have senile Biden. My fellow Americans, we need to send all of you to, we need to fight against Putin. No one's going to do this. There's going to be riots across the country, especially because the economy is going to be collapsing at the same fucking time this happens. So, look, Russia won the war already. They already won the war. This isn't a pro-Russia statement. It's a statement of fucking fact. Russia won the war. The question is, how much more do we want to lose in this entire conflict? Do we want to keep losing? Well, actually, I think our leaders do want us to keep losing. And so I think we will keep losing for a period of time. And this is the relevant point and the relevant question here. There are some stories going around right now about there was a terror attack in Transnistria. Now, Transnistria, for those of you who don't know, is this breakaway area, just in the eastern part of Moldova. And it has a peacekeeping force of Russians. Frankly speaking, it was always part of Russia. It was added to the Moldovan SSR. It's east of the Nistrian River, hence why it's called Transnistria. Okay? Transdniester. It's across the Dniester. Now, it was always Russian after the fall of the Soviet Union. Very interesting situation where the army was supportive of Transnistria, which was based in Tiraspol, versus the Air Force, which is based in Moldova proper. At any rate, it's been a split state since then. The rest of Transnistria is Romanian. And the Romanians, no questions, have no interest whatsoever in this conflict. They have no army. They're a 4 million person, 4 million person state. They're poor. They have fucking nothing. Frankly, Romania should have annexed them before. They should have asked for a referendum. I think Moldova would have agreed. They didn't do it probably simply because of the optics of it. It doesn't really matter. We're at the point right now where Ukraine, because they're so desperate to have any sort of arms whatsoever, that Ukraine is going to potentially invade Transnistria. And you can kind of get the sense of this because they said that Russia was going to invade in foreign countries, so you can see the sort of prompting of this. But I've heard all sorts of little, stories. Romanians are going to pretend to be Moldovans, and you're going to have this little situation. Who the fuck knows? Anyway, the bottom line is that the war is going to expand. That's what I'm trying to say. The war is going to expand. I don't know if it's going to be Transnistria and Romania, if it's going to expand there, but these fuckers are going to expand the war. Just don't be stupid. Understand they're going to do it. They're going to do it in Poland too. The war's going to expand. They're going to use all these poor Eastern European states who have ethnic animus, reasons to be pissed off, and they're going to force them to do it. I mean, Poland just today was told, you're not going to get gas unless you pay in rubles. And God, I love Poland. I mean, my wife's Polish. I speak Polish. We have, place in Poland, but they don't get it. They're tied in with ethnic animus, and the U.S. regime is going to use them to accomplish their goals. That's the way it is. So, and yeah, they're destroying. For the people who have been mentioning this, they are the World Economic Forum is 100% destroying processing plants, etc., food processing plants across the planet. They're trying to create a famine. Will they be successful? Who knows? But they want to kill people. And they have different strategies for every single population. And for the African population, it's certainly lack of food. No question. So, let's see here. Still down on Cernovich. I feel like he just got his feelings hurt by Trump, which is why he spouts off on him, and overall a good guy. Well, look, I mean, do I agree with Cernovich on everything? I don't agree with Cernovich on everything, but I'm a fan overall of what he's putting out. I'm a fan overall of what he's putting out. I don't know the dynamics, and perhaps I never will know the dynamics, but I'm kind of tired of the drama. You know what I mean? I'm tired of the drama. So I'm a fan of Cerno at the moment. Oh man, get the fucking hiccups here. Well, look, friends, it's been a long, excellent night, and I appreciate it all. Look, be prepared for those shortages. Be prepared for anything. But we're going to get through it, and we'll talk in a few weeks. I'll see you.